Sorry from 17 once again. This is my Ninja Gaiden 3 Ultimate Ninja difficulty video walkthrough. This is the third part of day 8, and we are in the second part, the second phase of the boss fight with the dude who I can't remember who his name is. This phase is easy compared to the first one. Your only threat here is either getting comboed and juggled by these scrubber spiky dudes, or getting hit by that Reaper-esque laser beam that the boss is doing. In the last video he destroyed our bow, so don't even try and use it. All you want to do here is kill these enemies with the safest technique possible to build Nimpo. When your Nimpo bar is full, you're going to use it to stun the boss, and then from there we're going to proceed to kill the boss and continue with the level and, you know, get to the end and all that good stuff. And the easiest way to do that and build your Nimpo is Wind Path into Flying Swallow into Obliteration Technique. It's safe, it works, and it looks pretty badass too. I do miss the Flying Swallow embed that this game has, which I just did to the boss then by accident, which is quite interesting. So, boss starts attacking us. I did that attack to drop him from the sky, then we can fight him on the feet. To get full maximum damage on this phase, what you want to do is you want to put on your scythe and you want to go to town on him when you can, doing the 360Ys or just the standard 360Y, or just doing a couple of combos after you evade. But you'll notice I was trying to play it safe because I'm not too comfortable with this fight, seeing as how this is maybe the third time I'd ever done it. Like, I don't know the bosses on this game because I've never been stuck on them long enough to struggle, and I've not fought them long enough to really, you know, fully understand everything about them. And there's a good reason for that, because I personally believe the bosses on this game are shit, and I don't want to fight them. You know, that's why I like Metal Gear Rising so much, because the bosses on that game, you know, I will put that disc in just to fight one of those bosses because they're so interesting and they're so imaginative, and they're a fun fight every time. You know, every mechanic is different, everything is interesting, it's all good and well. Similar with Ninja Gaiden 2, only on Ninja Gaiden 2 it's much more difficult to get to the bosses on the harder difficulties, which can sometimes put you off because nobody wants to play a ridiculous amount of, you know, content just to get to a boss fight. And that's one of the reasons I'll never understand modern gaming, where they've taken the ability out to fight bosses. You know, to do things like boss rush, or when you do level select to specifically pick bosses. Because the best way to learn anything, and this is in all walks of life, is to practice. Like, if there's a boss that's kicking your ass and you spend a couple of hours doing nothing but fight that boss, chances are he's not going to kick your ass for much longer, because you're gonna, even if you don't feel like you're getting better, you are. And I can speak from experience because at this moment in time I'm playing a bullet hell shooter, an arcade shooter, which I'm trying to at least do a credit every day so that I've, you know, continuously playing it. And even though I don't feel like I'm getting better or more adept or learning, I know I am, because things are changing. You know, I'm seeing the patterns, I'm seeing the gaps, I'm seeing the matrix, so to speak. And every single game and everything you can really apply yourself to is the same way. If you're willing to put the time in, you will reap the rewards, and the most challenging aspect of that is the fact that you do not see the incremental progression. You don't see the improvements until there's such a wide berth that you suddenly go from being, you know, not really skilled or knowledgeable to it being a natural thing of, I understand this, I can do this. And that's why I don't understand why games don't let you do that. You know, certain games I can get it with, you know, if it's a story game where the bosses are complementary to the narrative, or the boss is so unique that they don't want you playing it a whole bunch, because then you'll, you know, see behind the curtain, you'll see how the magic works and it won't be as cool. But for everything else, they should allow you to. And yet another paradigm I would like to change, or see change, in the accessibility of how we play games. Because everyone has a favourite bit. You know, think back of any game you've ever played that you've really played and you've really liked. You have a favourite bit, or you have a bit that is so good that you used to just play that one specific part because it was cool, or you loved it, or it was fun. Like, I've got a great example, was Super Smash Bros. Melee on the GameCube. There was challenges on this game where it put you in a preset situation, you played as a pre-selected character, and you had to do something to win. And on this particular one that I used to come home from school and play almost every day because I really loved it, you played as, I believe, Fox, and you were up against a bunch of the kind of holographic people, and there was 3 of them against you. It was everybody against you, but the hook to it was you had to kill them and take all their lives while staying alive, but Pokemon balls were the only weapon that dropped. So all around this arena were Pokeballs, and obviously you throw a Pokeball, a Pokemon comes out and it does something and it helps you and it kills a bunch of stuff. So I would just be running around this place, picking up the Pokemon balls, throwing them, getting the Pokemon, and just watching it cause havoc. And you would get some of the rarest dudes coming out and completely covering the screen in damage, and I would just punish the AI brutally by getting all the Pokemon balls and throwing them. And I used to love it because it was one of the best parts of that game. And I played that challenge a million times because I loved it. And if I'd have had to have played an hour's worth of game to get to it, I would have played it twice. Even if it was the most fun thing ever, because the barrier to entry was too high. And I think that's something that a lot of development teams do really wrong. You know, if you've got something cool in your game, don't hide it, celebrate it. Same with mechanics. You know, if you like your campaign and you want people to play your campaign, but all they do is go straight to the multiplayer because that's where the zeitgeist is, then give them a reason to play the campaign. Add something that gives it the same hook that's been invented in the multiplayer. You know, give them a reason to play again. And that reason can't just be collectibles or achievements. It has to be a gameplay hook. It has to be a mechanic, be it a score mechanic, be it a modifying mechanic which changes the experience. It has to be something, because people get bored, and the only way to keep something fresh is to give them something that they can either be improving on or constantly learning from. And once again, my biggest excitement in next gen has nothing to do with all the fucking sequels we're going to see or all the fancy graphics on the games we've already played. Nothing to do with that shit. It's completely to do with the potential for what is new. And especially whereas the AI is concerned, because there's been significant jumps in artificial intelligence throughout, generations of gaming. You look back to some of the earliest generations and the enemies literally, as soon as they aggroed and saw you, they would come to you in the shortest possible time. Shortest path to you to attack, and attack furiously. That's all they did. We then got the slightly more clever ones that used cover, that pushed forward with some kind of intellect. And then we skip it all the way to now, where there are intentional flaws added to AI to give them human characteristics, where they'll trip up or they'll fall in things, or they'll make mistakes. A great example of this is Halo. If you love Halo, or if you hate Halo, you have to admit that AI on those games, which hasn't changed all that much over the years, is a pioneer of really good AI. Like, it acts almost human at times. It's incredibly intelligent, it's very ruthless and challenging, and it's always different and random at the same time. It's a beautiful example of what AI can be. And if you compare the distance between those first artificial thoughts of AI, of moving whatever the closest distance was to get to you to smash you with the sword, to the intellect behind what the brutes do in Halo, or the elites, or the grunts, or anything, that distance between those 2 points is massive. Now I want you to think of what that next point and that equal distance, if not more distance, is going to be like. It's going to be something we cannot even begin to fathom. And I think that's really exciting. More than visual fidelity, more than frame rate, more than graphics, it's the potential for the game to be of a completely new level. And it doesn't have to isolate people or ostracize the communities. It doesn't have to have a bunch of people who are the only people able to play at such a level, and everybody else is like, I just don't understand it, it's too hard. It doesn't have to be that way. It has to challenge on a whole new level, and it's a level that right now I can't say what that is, because I don't know what that is, because it's not been invented yet, or it has and we don't know about it. And a lot of people are really excited for a game called Titanfall, because it's the people who made the Call of Duty formula making a new game. And even if you love or hate Call of Duty, even if you love or hate these people making Titanfall, and even if you think Titanfall looks like the most generic bullshit robot sci-fi trash and you're not interested, one thing you've got to be curious about, just on a base level, is can they do it again? What they did with Call of Duty 4. And I think that's the most curious part of all of it. More than what the game actually is, more than what you do, more than a first-person shooter. I think it transcends what the game will be by, can they bottle the lightning that they did, back in 2007 or whenever it was? Because, it's been a few years. People have tried to emulate it, people have tried to innovate, and every so often something really special and unique comes along, like, Demon Souls, where no one had really seen a multiplayer quite like it. Those fragile bonds to other worlds, that non-consensual multiplayer experience, and all that good stuff. Like, I think it's really interesting, and I'm really excited to see. And I've got to be honest, guys, I think Titanfall looks great, but I don't really care about it, because at the end of the day, it's just going to be another multiplayer shooter, and I'm at the point where I think my patience for those kind of games is just not as optimistic or as willing as it once was. I've done that thing. It has to really impress me to get me back on that, that opium pipe. It really does. Because if I'm, speaking from what I would like, I would much rather have a game like what you're watching right now, a Ninja Gaiden game, an action game like this, with a really good multiplayer mechanic. And it doesn't have to be competitive multiplayer. I'm not saying it has to be you versus another human. It could be, and it could be done fantastically. But it could be, imagine a game with this kind of combat in an arena like Grand Theft Auto, where you lose none of the fidelity of how good the fighting feels, but you have the exploration, you have the RPG elements, you have the scale of something much more grand. And not only that, but you have other people experiencing it with you. That to me is a much more exciting prospect than let's all run around in 60 frames per second and shoot each other again. Because that, to my knowledge, has not really been something that's been tried or done to any kind of sophisticated level. Oh, by the way, folks, if you're wondering why I'm not telling you anything about strategy at this point, the cool thing about this section is because you're with the Regent guy, he's going to distract enemies, and it's going to allow you to insta-kill them if they don't know you're there. So, for instance, the alchemists, if they're attacking him and you flying swallow, you will impale them and kill them. So you want to be careful, you want to be sneaky, and you want to use him to the best of your ability. But if you think he's going to kill things at any decent speed, you're in for a shock, because the dude is using like a level 1 sword, and this is level 2 million. He doesn't do any damage. He's so bad at killing things, but he's a great distraction, and he allows you to kill things, so use that to prosper. But a good example for things that haven't happened and I hope to happen are just hybrids of genres we already have, are just different progressions, different paths from what is the norm, what is the archetypes that we have at the moment. And a good example, I know I keep coming back to Dark Souls, but Dark Souls and Demon Souls are a great example of a third-person action game having a 1v1 PvP experience that can, be more than 1v1. It can be 2, 3, however many. But it is a detailed beat-em-up on a 3D space. And when you think about beat-em-ups, hardly any of them have ever moved successfully from a 2D plane to a 3D space. It just doesn't work. It's something that hasn't been figured out. And I've always wondered why there wasn't that frontier of games that were beat-em-ups in 3D space. And then you think of the ones that dabbled with it. You think of things like Anarchy Reigns, that's one of the more recent ones, which I actually didn't play, even though it was a Platinum game. Mainly because it looks really, really brown, and I wasn't really interested in playing another brown game at that point. But I do intend to get back to it, just to see what it was like. And then you think of things like Power Stone on the Dreamcast, which was kind of like an arena, battle-y, crazy mini-game-esque, lots of power-ups and stuff, super arcadey. like progenitor to Smash Brothers, which Smash Brothers was 2D, but it added, you know, a 3D element with the platforming and with the manipulation of the geometry and things. And I think Bushido Blade, was that 2D? I can't remember. I think there were certain parts of Bushido Blade that were 3D. But it's really an area that hasn't been looked into at all, because they've kind of realised that you'll never have the same response or fidelity of the one-to-one facing each other beat 'em up. So all they do is nuance that formula, and they've never really dabbled with the 3 dimensions, aside from like Tekken, where the fucking circle you stood on rotates around a 3D space, which is not 3D, it's just 2D done bullshitly. And all they do is evolve on what already exists, whereas Dark Souls is the first real game that I've noticed that took that 2D element of precision fighting into a 3D space. And that to me is a fascinating direction, which I'm hoping, you know, some developers are going to try and take, and a few indie PC devs have made, you know, games quite similar to this. But you know, when you compare it to how many first-person shooters and how many third-person shooters we have, that's when you really realise just how much is not being done in the games industry right now. How many different kind of hybrid titles could exist, and genres that have yet to be created could come in this next generation. And as I've mentioned, that to me is far more exciting than frame rate and fidelity, because those two things are great, but they don't make a great game. So thank you for watching, guys, and you take care now.